Hi, I'm Jim Heavey, and I'm standing here next to a very pretty demi-lune table. Beautiful little half arch in the front, some very nice little metalwork on the face of this. But what I find really striking is the top. The beautiful grain that you see in here just adds to this project. And most people would think that that came from one large board, and it really didn't. It's hard to find wood that wide anymore. These are all individual boards that were glued up to appear as though it were one large board. Most woodworkers find this pretty daunting. They're a little bit confused about the process. It's actually really easy, and it's all done with a glue line ripping blade. And let me show you how to do that on the table saw. I actually prefer to do all of my joinery on the table saw. There are woodworkers that like to do it on a joiner, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the joiner can occasionally leave a slight scalloped edge on the end of the board. And when boards are joined together, the smoother and the better mated surfaces are actually a much better glue joint, and that slight scallop makes that mismatch cause a problem. You can use a normal table saw blade, and that table saw blade can work okay, except that it can occasionally leave swirls. And again, those irregular edges just don't mate well, and the glue doesn't bond as strong. The blade that I'm going to use for this is a Freud glue line rip blade. This particular blade has 30 teeth, and though it may not seem like a lot, the spacing between each one of these teeth and those deeper gullets are really important when you're trying to remove the shavings that come from ripping a board along its grain. It also has a triple chip grind. That allows for a much sharper blade, much cleaner on the edges, providing a really swirl-free surface. The blade itself is really thick, really heavy, provides a lot of anti-vibration through the little slots that you see cut in the blade here, and it provides a very clean cut, again with the idea that the faces have to be exactly matching to provide a really nice glue joint. This blade works really well. I'm going to throw it in the table saw, and let's see what kind of a cut and a joint it makes. Now I'm going to take my blade and put it in the table saw. Always be a little bit careful when you set it in there so you don't ding any of these edges. I'll just slide it in like this. Put our lock nut on here and tighten it up. And there's no need to provide any inordinate tension on there. The spinning blade will tighten itself up real well. Once I've got it in there, I want to make sure too that my blade is set with just a little bit of the gullet showing. So I'm getting a nice clean cut, and I want those blades sticking up just a little bit above the top. And the last thing before we start is to take this piece of stock, or these couple pieces of stock, and just try and find the nicest grain match. There may be differences in color, differences in the way the swirls go, and I want to kind of move these around until I find a look that I like. And in this particular case, I think that the grain seems to work out well here. And then we'll just take a little piece of chalk and mark those. Those are the edges that I'm going to send past that blade. And again, the goal in doing this is to provide an edge on both faces that mate together so well that just by hand pressure, you can't see between that joint. So we'll run a couple of boards through there and take a look at the joint when we're done. Now, before I turn the saw on, just a couple of things I want to review. The first is, it's probably easy to see that we don't have the guard on here. I've taken it off to make it much easier for you to see. And of course, I'll be using safety glasses and hearing protection while I'm doing this too. One of the other things that will help provide a little bit of relief for the blade is on the fence itself. In a perfect world, the fence should be parallel to the blade, but in many cases, as you're cutting, provide a little bit of pressure on the backside, which can cause a kickback or maybe even burning of your wood. So what I'll suggest doing is set up your fence so that it, in this case, touches on one edge of my, my slot and is away on the far corner here, about the thickness of a dollar bill or so. Just enough room to give me a little bit of relief, so as I pass that wood by, what I get is a nice clean cut on it without any burning. It actually works pretty well. Let's turn the saw on and get cutting. All right, so let's set this board in here and trim a little bit off this edge. And now for the true test. Those joints line up beautifully. Nice, clean, even joint line, and it's all because of that Freud glue line rip blade. It provided a very smooth, perfect square edge that now will provide a great glue joint. One of the things I like to do is, I can look at it down here, but if I hold this up to the light, and with just a little hand pressure, I can't see light coming through that. It means when you put it in your clamps, just a little bit of clamping pressure provides a joint that is going to look like one large board instead of the two that we started with. Excellent joint. You'll be thrilled when you get that, and it's easy with that blade.